Okay, in this video, I am going to share with you the results from the 1970s American League Strat-O-Matic Diamond Gems tournament that I played. This set from Series A and B, we have 7 teams from the American League. I use the same point system that I used for my 1980s Strat-O-Matic tournament, where you get 10 points if you were a World Series champ. You get 5 if you're an American League champ. You get 3 if you win 100 games. And then I use total wins in a season as a tiebreaker. So obviously, if you're a World Series champ, you get at least 15 points right off the bat. So let me get right into the rankings for you. At number 1, we have the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. At number 2, we've got the 78 Yankees. Number 3, we have the 72 A's. Then at number 4, we got the 79 O's. 5 and 6 are both Boston Red Sox. Number 5 is 75 Sox, and number 6 are the 78 Sox. And at number 7, the 1970 Minnesota Twins. The reason why the 78 Red Sox have a higher ranking in my point system than the Minnesota Twins, even though I know the 78 Red Sox didn't even make the postseason, they did have one more win in the regular season than the 1970 Minnesota Twins. So that's how those rankings worked out. And the funny thing about the way these rankings worked out is that if I was just to rank them in terms of just what I think about the teams themselves, I wouldn't have the 78 Yankees anywhere near number 2 overall out of this group of teams. In fact, I would definitely say this going in. I believe the 72 A's are way better than the 78 Yanks. I think the 79 O's are way better than 78 Yanks. I think the 70 Twins are a little bit better than the 78 Yanks. And I think the 75 Sox and 78 Red Sox are both just a little bit better than the 78 Yanks. So, but anyway, that's the way I do my point system to try to keep it fair and as well as to try to give the teams who actually accomplished more in real life a leg up as we go into the tournament. Now, let me share with you how the bracket breaks down. I did this kind of the same idea as my 1980s AL and NL Strat tournaments. We're going to have 2 play-in games. The first one will be the number 7 ranked Minnesota Twins at the number 6 78 Red Sox. And then the winner of that goes on to play the number 5 seed. And then the winner of that will move on to the first round, which is a best of 3, where the number 4 ranked 1979 Baltimore Orioles will be waiting for them. And of course, all 3 games will be played in Baltimore for that series. Also, follow the same idea as far as days off. Basically, the way it works is the first play in game is played on one day, and then the next day you play the next play-in game. And then the next day you start the best of 3. And the reason why I do that, of course, is just so one of the teams can't ride like one great starting pitcher through the early part of the tournament, get them through a couple playing games, and then get into the tournament. This is really going to test the team's starting rotation depth. Same with the bullpen. So I thought it worked out pretty well for my 80s tournament. So that's what I decided to do following along here. With my 1970s tournament. Let me go through the results of this tournament. And once again, I'm not going to be going into great detail about the games themselves. I will be sharing with you the play-by-play. The first playing game, once again, is the 1970 Twins at the 1978 Red Sox, where we have Jim Perry going for the Twins and Mike Torres for the 78 Red Sox. And you're going to see the 1970 Twins win this one very easily by a score of 8-0. And if you see at the end of the sheet, it was the top of the Twins order that really rolled this game for the 1970 Twins. You had Tovar, Carew, and Killebrew all have 3 hits. Harmon Killebrew hit 2 home runs and had 5 RBIs. So the 1970 Twins are moving on to play the 1975 Red Sox in the second play-in game, and the 1978 Red Sox are out of the tournament. So in the second play-in game, the 1970 Twins have Burt Blyleven on the mound, and they're going up against Louis Tiant for the 1975 Red Sox. In this game, the 1970 Twins win this one by a score of 7-3. So the 1970 Minnesota Twins are moving on to the best of three, where they would take on the 1979 American League champion Baltimore Orioles. All three games, if necessary, will be in Baltimore. You can see once again the top of that Twins order really did a lot of damage in this game, as Carew and Oliva both had 3 hits each. Rod Carew had a home run, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. So the Minnesota Twins are moving on to the best of three round. In the first game of that best of three, we have Jim Cott going for the 1970 Twins and Mike Flanagan on the mound for the 79 O's. And you're going to see the 1979 Orioles win this one easily by a score of 9-0. It was a close game going into the bottom half of the seventh inning. And then the Orioles were able to really open it up. The big hit in the inning was a Ken Singleton 3-run homer, and you could see Singleton, Murray, and DeCinces all had home runs in the game. So the 1979 Orioles are 1 win away from moving on to the semifinals. Now, moving on to game number 2 now, keep in mind, because these games have been played in consecutive days, the 1970 Minnesota Twins have to go with their number 4 starter, Bill Zepp, in the game. And Bill Zepp has a nice card. And he's going up against Dennis Martinez in the second game of this best of three. Once again, the 79 Orioles are 1 win away from moving on to the semifinals, and we're going to see right here that the 1979 Orioles are able to eliminate the 1970 Twins with a 9-3 win. You can see Zepp got chased pretty early. Some of the damage that was done was not necessarily all Bill Zepp's fault. The 2-run home run by Singleton in the bottom of the first was a home run on Singleton's card. And then after 2 errors, one by Oliva in right and Harmon Killebrew at third. And I did mention this in my 1970 Twins team analysis video. If there's one thing that I really don't like about the 1970 Minnesota Twins team, is I don't like some of the E ratings on this team. And after a couple of games of getting away with it, it really came back to bite them in this game. So we have the 2 errors. And the Doug DeCinces home run, that was a home run 1-2 on Bill Zepp's card, and on the D20 it just came up a home run. So that was just bad luck on the part of looking at it from a Twin standpoint there. So the Orioles have a 5-0 lead after one. Tom Hall entered the game in the bottom half of the second inning, and he did a really nice job of keeping the 70 Twins in the game, as they were able to cut the lead to 5-3. But you see Gary Renicky, who was inserted as a pinch hitter for John Lowenstein in the fifth inning. And then he comes up again in the bottom half of the seventh inning with Ron Paranowski on the mound, and Renicky hits a 3-run home run to basically put the game away. So the 1979 Baltimore Orioles are moving on to the first semifinal round, where they will take on the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. And the 1979 O's are looking pretty good right now, because they win the best of three in only having to play 2 games. So they get 2 days off going into the semifinal round. So it's not like they could completely reset their rotation. I didn't want to start Mike Flanagan on 3 days rest to start the semifinal round, but it does help the 79 Orioles that they didn't have to play the full 3 games to eliminate the 1970 Twins. And in the bottom bracket, the second semifinal will be the 1972 Oakland A's against the 1978 New York Yankees. And let's take a look at what happened with the 72 A's and 78 Yankees. Game number 1, we got Catfish Hunter going for the 72 A's and Ron Guidry for the 78 Yanks. You can see the 72 A's get game 1 by a score of 3-0, as Jackson hits a 2-run home run in the ninth and Epstein hits a solo home run. One batter later for the 3-0 win. Both of those home runs were ballpark effect home runs off of the hitter card. So really just tough luck for Guidry and the 78 Yanks. Catfish Hunter just absolutely terrific in this game. As you see, he only allows 7 base runners as he goes all the way. So the 72 A's get game number 1. In game number 2, we have Vita Blue against Don Gullett. And you can see the 78 Yankees take this one by a score of 4-1, stretch the goose out for 3 innings. In this game. It actually is a big help that Goose Gossage in 1978 is a 3 inning reliever, because this was a game that the 78 Yankees absolutely had to have. So the series is tied as we go back to Oakland for games 3 and 4. In game number 3, we got Ed Figueroa going for the 78 Yanks and Ken Holtzman for the A's. And you could see, once again, terrific pitching on both sides as the 72 A's win this one by a score of 3-2. Ken Holtzman only allows 1 run in 7 innings of work. Forgot to mark down the losing pitcher. Oh no, I actually did it. I see it scribbled down there. Sparky Lyle got the losses. He came in, allowed 1 hit, and then I brought in Tidrow, but that didn't work out. So the 1972 A's have a 2 games to 1 lead in this best of 5. So going into game number 4, have really no other choice for the 78 Yankees but to throw Ron Guidry out there for game 4. I was pretty much committed to either going Guidry or Hunter for the A's and the Yankees, depending on who lost game number 3. So since the A's won game 3, Guidry comes back on game 4 for the 78 Yanks, and the Yankees get this one by a score of 5-0 as they are able to defeat Blue Moon Onum. You can see the game was scoreless going into the top half of the 7th inning, and we have back-to-back home runs by Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson. And Ron Guidry was just absolutely lights out in this game as he goes 8 scoreless innings, only allowing four base runners and striking out 8. So the series moves back to New York for a decisive game number 5, where obviously Catfish Hunter will be on the mound for the 72 A's. And what I decided to do for the 78 Yankees, rather than bring Gullett back on 3 days rest, I decided to throw Jim Beattie out there for the 78 Yanks. Hadn't used him out of the bullpen yet because the situation really didn't call for it. And I do really like his card against right-handed hitters. And I felt like, this would be a situation that might help the 78 Yanks rather than throwing Gullett out there again. Also, the other thing which I did for the 78 Yanks was I decided to insert Jim Spencer into the lineup just to get a little more pop in the bottom of the order. Basically, it was either White or Spencer at DH. I decided to just go with Jim Spencer. And you're going to see, I wish I was able to pick stocks this well because Jim Spencer absolutely just killed it in the deciding game number 5 here. As you see, he goes 3 for 4 with a home run and 3 RBIs. The 78 Yanks were able to have a 7-1 lead after 6 innings, and the 72 A's did make the game kind of interesting in those last 3 innings against the Goose. You could see in the top half of the 7th inning, pinch hitter Mike Hegan gets a double, and then Joe Rudy hits a 1-out 2-run home run to make the score 7-3. And you could see in the top half of the 8th inning, the 72 A's were able to put 2 guys on. Did everything I could to get the 72 A's back into this game. I was just running pinch hitter after pinch hitter after pinch hitter out there for whoever was inserted in the 9 hole, whoever was playing second base. And you could see I pinch hit for the 9 hitter. Let's see, Marquez, Hegan, and Dean Tennis. That's right. Have that noted up there with the star. So I pinch hit 3 times there. So the 1978 Yanks are able to defeat the 1972 A's 3 games to 2 in this best of 5, which is really a result that kind of surprises me a little bit in the sense that I really feel like the 72 A's are definitely the better Strat-O-Matic team. But I think one thing that happened not only in this game 5, but really throughout the series, as you could see, the 72 A's committed 3 errors in this game. And the Yankees were able to plate 4 runs across the board that were unearned runs. And I did talk about this in my 1972 A's team analysis that, some of these E ratings can be a little bit high. Well, I really feel the same way about some of the guys on the 78 Yankees, but it really didn't come back to bite the 78 Yankees. It did come back to bite the 72 A's. So I really feel like this was a series won based on the fact that the weaknesses of the 78 Yankees did not come out as much as the weaknesses on the 72 A's came out. With that said, I still feel like the better team lost this series, but nonetheless, the 1978 Yankees are moving on to my American League final, where they will wait to see who they play, and they will play the winner of the 1979 Orioles against the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. Now let's see what happens in the other semifinal where we got the 1979 Baltimore Orioles. They're the number 4 seed, taking on the number 1 seed, the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. Now, just a reminder, the 1979 Orioles come into the series in pretty good shape because they won their first round series, the best of three in 2 games. So they had 2 days off coming into this series. So I could have gone with Mike Flanagan on 3 days rest for game number one, but I decided not to do that. Got no problem starting Palmer game number one for the 79 Orioles, and he's going up against Mike Cuellar. So let's take a look what happens in game number one. You can see the 79 Orioles take this one by a score of 4-2, as all of their offense comes in the top half of the seventh inning. Where with the bases loaded and 2 out, I pinch hit Benny Ayala for Mark Belanger, and he hits a grand slam, and that was a home run hit off of Mike Cuellar's card, by the way. So that gave the 79 O's a 4-1 lead, and the 1970 Orioles, you could see, were able to cut the lead to 4-2 in the bottom half of the eighth inning as Brooks Robinson had a 2 outs bases loaded walk, and then Merv Renton made the last out of the inning by striking out. That was with Tim Stoddard on the mound, and then Stoddard retires the side in the bottom half of the ninth inning. So the 1979 Orioles take the first game of this best of five. Now moving on to game number two, we have Mike Flanagan going for the 79 O's and Dave McNally going for the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. And this was a game where the um, defense, uh, I actually labeled it an E8, but it actually should be an E7. You see in the top half of the eighth inning, where the 79 Orioles took the lead for good, the game was tied 1-1 in the top half of the eighth inning. And we had a Dempsey leadoff single. He gets bunted to second by Mark Belanger. And then Don Buford makes an error in left field. Surprisingly enough, Buford was only an E3, but it was just the way the dice came up. So that's a two-base error, and because Dempsey was standing on second base, he scores. So the 1979 Orioles take a 2-0 series lead in this best of five over the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. You can see Mike Flanagan pitches another good game as he only allows 1 run in 8 innings, and Tim Stoddard closes out the game for his second straight save of the series. So as we move on to game number three, we have Jim Palmer on the mound for the 1970 Orioles, and he's going up against Dennis Martinez for the 1979 Orioles. And you could see once again the 1970 Orioles just could not get the bats going, and the 1979 Orioles were able to finish the sweep by winning it 3-1. You could see they were able to take the lead for good in the bottom half of the sixth inning. The play-by-play there was Al Bumry led off walking and stealing second base. Then Rich Dower made an out without advancing him. Ken Singleton walks, and then Eddie Murray strikes out. And with 2 out and 2 on, Jim Palmer on the mound, John Lowenstein at the plate. John Lowenstein comes through with an RBI double, scoring Al Bumry. And then Lee May follows that up with an RBI single. And the only thing that ended that inning was Paul Blair throwing out John Lowenstein trying to score at home. So the 79 Orioles have a 3-1 lead after 6 innings. And you see that's how the game would stay. The 70 Orioles were able to make it interesting in the top half of the ninth inning. They were able to load the bases with nobody out. Tim Stoddard was on the mound, but you had a strikeout by Rentman, and then Davy Johnson grounds into a double play. So the 1979 Orioles sweep the 1970 Baltimore Orioles, which means The championship round of my 70s Strat-O-Matic tournament will be the number 4 ranked 1979 Baltimore Orioles taking on the 1978, the number 2 seed, the 1978 New York Yankees. Okay, so let's see what happens in my 1970s American League tournament final. 1979 Orioles versus 1978 Yankees. In game number one, we have Mike Flanagan on the mound for the O's and Ed Figueroa for the 78 Yanks. Now, just a reminder going into this series, the 79 O's pitching staff is all set because they swept the semifinal round against the 1970 Orioles. So there's no issues with their starting rotation. With the 78 Yankees, remember they went 5 games against the 72 A's, and Guidry went games 1 and 4 in that series. So rather than bring Guidry back on 3 days rest to pitch game number 2, my plan for the 78 Yankees was to go Figueroa 1, Gullett 2, and then Guidry will pitch game 3. But first, let's take a look at what happens in game number 1 here. And you can see the Yankees were able to jump right on Mike Flanagan early as Greg Nettles hits a 1-out grand slam in the bottom half of the first inning to make the score 5-0. And that's pretty much how it would stay the rest of the way. The Yankees win very easily, 6-0. You can see Ed Figueroa goes all the way for the shutout, only allowing 1 hit. So the 1978 Yankees get the first game of this best of 5. Now in game number 2, we have Jim Palmer on the mound for the 79 O's, Don Gullett for the 78 Yankees. And you could see terrific pitching on the part of the Orioles in this game as they win the game 4-0. The score was 1-0 in the bottom half of the sixth inning, and really felt like this was a really, really key moment in the game because if I could just show you this bottom half of the sixth inning, if you start with where Mickey Rivers leads off with a single and then steals second, and then with 1 out, Thurman Munson walks. I pretty much decide right then and there with the score 1-0 and the 79 O's also already being down 1 game in this series, having to face Guidry in game number 3. I pretty much felt like this was a situation that could decide the series. So I pulled Jim Palmer. Probably wasn't too happy about that. Probably yelled at me when I went to the mound to take him out. But anyway, bring in Tippy Martinez because I have 2 lefties coming up to the plate with Nettles and Chambliss. So Tippy is able to retire both of them, and pretty much the rest of the way just decided to ride Tippy Martinez the rest of the way because the way the game was folding was the Orioles get a run in the top half of the seventh inning, thanks to a Gary Renicky solo home run. So I kind of felt like, okay, if I just leave Tippy in there to, get guys like Pinella and Cliff Johnson out, and then we come back to the top of the order where you have lefty Mickey Rivers, and then you got 2 righties, Randolph and Munson. Kind of felt like when we get back to those lefties in the Yankees lineup, Jackson, Nettles, Chambliss, that would be another key situation in the game. So honestly, just decided to just ride Tippy Martinez the rest of the way in this win. So he goes 3 2/3 innings to get the save. So the 1979 Orioles get a game that they absolutely had to have, and we go back to Baltimore with the series tied 1 game apiece. Now in game number 3, 78 Yankees at 79 O's. We have Ron Guidry on the mound for the Yanks and Dennis Martinez on the mound for the Orioles. And you could see the Yankees were able to squeak this one out by winning by a final score of 3-2. You could see Guidry goes almost all the way as he goes 8 2/3 innings, allowing 5 hits and 7 walks. So the 79 Orioles did have him on the ropes a couple of times. And you could see the Yankees were able to take the lead in the top half of the 8th inning. And this is really where there was a pinch hitting move earlier in the game where I pinch hit Benny Ayala for Mark Belanger. And so that brought Kiko Garcia into the game to play shortstop. And in that top half of the eighth inning, Greg Nettles leads off with a single. He would eventually come around to score. That single was a ground ball to shortstop. So that was one issue right there. And then the RBI single by Chris Chambliss, that was a fielding chart hit on a fly ball to center field. So the Orioles defense let them down a little bit in that inning, even though they don't go down as errors, they were still fielding chart hits. And I wanted to make a point of that in the play-by-play because I kind of had a feeling when the Yankees took that lead there in the top half of the eighth inning that they would hold on. And you could see Guidry was able to retire the side in the bottom half of the eighth inning. And in the bottom half of the ninth, he gets Bunbury and Dower out. And then I take Guidry out to bring in Gossage to pitch to Singleton, and then if anyone reaches base, Eddie Murray. The reason why I wanted to switch Singleton and Murray around in those situations there was because the ballpark effect home run in Baltimore for 1979 favors right-handed bats, not left-handed bats. On a D20 for a right-handed hitter, it's a 1 to 14. It's a home run. For a left-handed hitter on a D20, it's only 1 to 8. So that's why I decided to turn Singleton and Murray around. So the 78 Yankees take a 2-1 series lead. Once again, they win game three by a final score of 3-2. So in game number four now, with the Yankees up 2-1, I felt like there was really no need to bring Ed Figueroa back on 3 days rest. So I decided to throw Jim Beattie out there for the 78 Yanks. Had no other choice for the 79 Orioles but to bring back Mike Flanagan. And in a game where it seemed like there were a million moves made, and you're going to see them on the play-by-play sheet. Let's see. I made one, two, three, four, five. There were five pitching changes in this game. Um, in a game that goes 10 innings and ends 1-0, the 1979 Orioles are able to force a game number five. As you could see, they were finally able to get it run across in the bottom half of the 10th inning, where with one out, you had a Al Bunbury single, and he's able to steal second base off of Dick Tidrow. And that turned out to be a huge stolen base because with two outs, Ken Singleton gets a ribby single. That scores Al Bunbury. Basically, that was a situation where it was like a pick your poison situation. Even though first base was open, it was like, okay, who are you going to pitch to, Ken Singleton or Eddie Murray? So it's Ken Singleton coming through with the two-out ribby single. So the 1979 O's are able to force a game number five. So my 1970s American League Strat-O-Matic tournament eventually comes down to a one-game playoff where we're going to have Jim Palmer on the mound for 3 days rest for the 79 O's and Ed Figueroa going on full rest for the 1978 Yankees. And you're going to see the big star in this game was designated hitter Lee May for the 79 Orioles as he goes 4 for 4 with a home run and 3 RBIs. Um, and you could see his pinch runner also scored a run in the top half of the eighth inning. I took May out for a pinch runner. So the 1979 Orioles are able to win my 1970 Strat-O-Matic tournament. You could see I kind of followed the same model as I did the game number two, which Palmer started and won. I felt like in the bottom half of the sixth inning, with the Orioles up 4-1, you're going to see Reggie Jackson leads off the bottom of the sixth with a home run, and then Palmer retires Nettles and Piniella, and Chambliss gets a single. So I got a runner on first with two out in a two-run game, and Jim Spencer coming up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's no way I'm going to let Jim Spencer pop one out here over the short right field porch in Yankee Stadium. So the move there was to bring in Tippy Martinez. Yankees counter by bringing up Cliff Johnson. He strikes out. So moving on to the top half of the seventh inning, I say, okay, well, it's now or never for the 78 Yankees. They're already down 2 runs, got to hold them here. So I bring in Gossage. Gossage is able to tiptoe his way through the seventh inning without giving up a run, but he does give up a very big run in the top half of the eighth inning to make the score 5-2. The Yankees were able to get that run back. You had a Jackson leadoff single. Jackson also goes 4 for 4 in this game, by the way, with a home run. And then you had, with one out, you had a Pinella double. So next you had Chris Chambliss ground out. That scores Reggie Jackson. And Roy White pinch hits for Cliff Johnson. And he strikes out. Now, you could see in the bottom half of the ninth inning, the Yankees were able to get a runner on. The JJ that you see there, that's Jay Johnstone pinch hitting for Bucking Debt. Wanted a lefty bat up there against Tim Stoddard. He leads off with an out. Mickey Rivers was able to get a single, but since the Yankees were down by 2 runs, the stolen base is basically out of the equation. So after that, Randolph and Munson make out. I was just trying to extend that inning as best I could to try to get Jackson in at bat against the righty Tim Stoddard to see what happened there. But you could see a terrific performance by the Orioles bullpen in game number 5, which is what you need to win games like this, as they were able to cover 3 1/3 innings of shutout ball in this game with Tim Stoddard getting the save. You can see I even brought in Scott McGregor to try to get a couple of lefties out in that bottom half of the eighth inning. You could see I brought him in to pitch to Jackson and Nettles. He gave up a single to Jackson, but then got Nettles out, and then I turned the game over to Tim Stoddard. So Jim Palmer gets the win, and the 1979 Orioles win my 1970s American League Strat-O-Matic tournament as they defeat the 1978 Yankees in the final 3-2. So, a couple quick thoughts about the way this tournament went down. I'm going to start where I started with my other videos with my overall thought on the winner. Was I surprised that the 1979 Orioles won this tournament? Not really, because I felt like the 79 Orioles were one of the 3 teams that would win this tournament. I felt like going in the 3 best teams, just based on my opinion, my thoughts on the teams. I felt like the 3 best teams in order was 70 Orioles, 72 A's, 79 Orioles. So I'm not that surprised that the 79 Orioles won this tournament. To me, if I was surprised at anything that the 79 Orioles did, was it did surprise me that they swept the 70 Orioles in the semifinal. I did not see that coming. I thought the 79 Orioles had a chance to win the series going in, but I did not think it would be a sweep. I think my biggest surprise in this tournament was if you would have told me before the tournament, even though the 78 Yankees were the number 2 seed going in, and once again, I don't do these seeds or rankings based on what I think about the Strat-O-Matic team. I look at the results from the actual season. And the 1978 Yankees were just one of 2 American League teams to win 100 games and win the World Series in the decade of the 1970s. So that's how they got the number 2 seed. I feel like if you would have told me before the tournament started that the 1978 Yankees would have 2 opportunities to win 1 game to win the entire tournament, I did not think that would be possible, even though they were the number 2 seed. Okay, I could see them beating the 1972 A's in a best of 5. Everyone can get lucky winning 1 series, but to then turn around and play another series against another really good team like the 1979 Orioles and again be 1 win away from winning the entire tournament. And let's face it, if they had just gotten 1 or 2 hits in game number 4, the series could have been over in 4 games. That was actually my bigger surprise, that the 1978 Yankees came that close to winning this tournament. Because like I kind of said earlier in the video, if I was to look at all of these teams, I would say the 2 Oriole teams, the 72 A's, and then I know it sounds crazy, but the 1970 Twins, I would throw them in there as far as like the top 4 teams in this tournament. What is also impressive to me about the 1979 Orioles winning this tournament is you got to remember that they did have to win a best of 3 series just to get to the semifinal rounds. And they won the first 2 games of that series. Then they turn around and they sweep the 1970 Orioles, and then they beat the 78 Yankees in 5 games. So The 1979 Orioles were able to go 8-2 against the 1970 Twins, 1970 Orioles, and 1978 New York Yankees, which is very impressive. And they earned this tournament win because you got to remember they were down 2-1 against the 78 Yankees, and they had to win Game 4 in extra innings by a score of 1-0. And that's an example of testing a team's both starting rotation and bullpen depth. You also saw that in game number 5, like I said, 3 1/3 shutout innings by the Orioles bullpen to win the deciding game number 5. So those are my results on my 1970s American League Strat-O-Matic tournament. The 1979 Orioles are the winners. I thank you all for watching. It is greatly appreciated, and I will talk to you all down the road.